Hello there, fine people. Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He, of course, is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. How you feeling today, Rob?
I'm doing well. I got my smoke out, bug out thing put together. So come out to Maryland, come out to Philly, go to porchstore.com. Got a lot of porches coming up. And then, of course, next weekend, it's a pleasant break from porches to do Tacoma, Washington, and Spokane with you. And
yeah,
those were good clubs.
They were great. I can't wait to be back there. Yeah, Tacoma, Spokane, come on out. But first, enjoy a Labor Day with Robbie the Fire Bernstein if you're in the area. Yeah, and then we got a bunch of stuff coming up for the rest of the year. A whole bunch of great shows. Yep, that's right. ComicDaveSmith.com for all the ticket links to see me and Rob together for the rest of the year, and PORCHtour.com to go to one of the as the summer's coming to an end. The leaves are already, I'm seeing some change colors, Rob. It's out here in the Northeast where we got seasons. The seasons are a-changing.
I feel like I did a lot this summer, but I'm also bummed that it's like my summer's not over. I'm going to continue to porch, but there is something about
your whole life is a summer, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, I just head to warmer climates. I'm like a snowbird of porches. But I don't know. There's something a little bit like, wait, that was all of summer? Jeez.
It did go quick. Yeah, it's been a wild year for me. It's the whole thing has just gone kind of quick, but yep, summer's almost over. Before you know it, we'll be in 2026. There is there's for today's show, I did think it would be interesting to respond a little bit here, and I have not watched the interview. I watched part of this clip, but I haven't. I'll be reacting in real time to like the second half of it at least. But I know you saw, Rob, and I'm sure many of you people who are watching the show saw that my guy, excuse me, my guy Patrick Bet David had Benjamin Netanyahu on the show. And of course, this follows after Benjamin Netanyahu was just on Trigonometry with Konstantin Kassin. And there's, of course, now this is in terms of what the publicly available information is. We also know that Benjamin Netanyahu's son was slamming Joe Rogan for not having Benjamin Netanyahu on, saying he refused. That hasn't been really confirmed in any other way. But either way, it does just really hit on this point that I was making before we responded to the one where he was on Trigonometry, that I cannot overstate how much it just kind of blows me away. Of course, it confirms a lot of what me and you have been saying for quite a while, but it really is. It's just so wild to me that Israel is losing the propaganda war so badly. And it's also so fascinating that Benjamin Netanyahu on some level knows that the way to try to fight this is to roll up his sleeves and get on podcasts. That is just so interesting to me, man. Like it's like he knows. It's a real admission in a way that they're like, look, this is now where the narrative is being constructed, for better or worse. That's where you got to go. Benjamin Netanyahu is the guy who can go on any corporate media show that he wants to go on and be guaranteed the softest of softball interviews. Just, it'll be nothing but lobs over the plate. I mean, if Benjamin Netanyahu wants to go on ABC or NBC or CBS or Fox News or CNN, he knows he can go there and all of the questions will just be like, fastballs over the middle. It'll all just be like, and so on October 7th, where you're, and yet he can go to the Congress. They'll give him applause break for every time he hits a vowel, but he knows he's got to go into the podcast space. So that to me is just fascinating. Also, I will throw this out there as a couple of proud Zionist Jews ourselves here, Rob. We're happy to have Netanyahu on this podcast. It'll be a civilized discussion and nothing but easy questions anytime. BB, look, we should do that. Virtual, in person, whatever you want to do. But
be careful
I don't know.
On the in person, they might invite you to Israel again.
In person in the United States of America. Uh-oh. These days, that's just feeling like more Israel. You know what? I want to meet in Canada. That's where we're going to do this.
Neutral territory.
Yeah, they support a Palestinian state. No, okay, fine. Let's keep it remote. Good point, Rob. But still, open invite anytime. I'll drop anything and we could do it. But anyway, so he was on. I don't know if there's anything you want to say on that. I mean, I guess it's a point me and you have been making for a while, but it still is just amazing to me that they've got to come get into the podcast game. Everybody just knows kind of like that's where people are getting their information from.
So I think I listened to about 30 of the 45 minutes of this. I have not listened to him on trigonometry yet. But Patrick Bet-David, he asked fair questions, all questions I'd like to hear Netanyahu respond to. And not to say that Netanyahu is not lying, but he does handle himself remarkably well, particularly if you're used to our Western politicians and their way of talking. Netanyahu's very good at this. And so I actually understand why he goes, I'll show up. I can go handle myself. He's pretty smooth.
Yeah. Well, there's also something, I mean, look, this I think is a dynamic that's just been true in general, at least since Obama. I mean, and then of course we had George W. Bush before him who fit the mold of this, but there is, particularly with like Biden and Trump, there is something whether you see a foreign leader, this isn't saying anything good about them. But when you see Putin or Netanyahu, there's just something where like, oh, you're actually watching a competent leader. You know, and I don't mean, look, there's lots of things both of them have done that I think are not in the best interest of their country or not. But I'm just saying, like, that you're watching someone who I think has like read a lot of books about the topic that they're speaking on. And even if they're lying or they're full of shit, they know stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they're not idiots. And when you listen to Joe Biden or Donald Trump, that's just not the same thing. And so, like, yeah, no, Benjamin Netanyahu is a guy who, no matter what you bring up, he's got a talking point for that. He's got a response for that. Now, it might be complete bullshit. He is quite happy to just lie through his teeth. He's not there to tell the truth. He's there to manipulate an audience, but he's got something. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, it's you know, part of being successful in political debates is not just like, you know, you have to have your arguments, but then you also have to know what the counter arguments are likely to be and know how to debunk those counter arguments. And like, he at least has something that you'd have to know how to be able to debunk. Now, I'm the opposite of you. I watched the full Konstantin interview. I have not seen this, only saw like part of the clip that we're about to play, but let's go through it.
I was more intrigued by this one because Patrick tends to ask follow-up questions and sharp questions and hard to answer questions.
Yeah.
So I figured that this would be the less favorable or more interesting of the two interviews.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things, like, the first time I did Patrick Bet-David's show, he did it like that, where it was like a probing interview, where he'd like ask you a question, try to ask you a tough question, ask you real tough follow-up questions, like really push you on everything. And then since then, well, I did the debate with Cuomo, and then I did like, I think I did it a couple other times where it was like a panel, or then I did the election night one, and it wasn't like that. But I just saying, like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed every time I was on there, but I really liked that first time. Like, I'd almost love to do that again if you wanted to, like, just ask me the tough, because there is something that's really fun about that, and it's like a useful exercise for yourself too. Like, okay, yeah, like, see if there's one of these questions that, like, I don't know, I'd be the first one to go like, oh, all right, that's a good, you know what I mean, like, you got me on that, there might be something there, and it makes you kind of like think on your feet. So I like that. No, he's very good, and he's very good at doing that in a way where it's not shitty or like combative unnecessarily, but he is really like Socratic method questioning you to make sure that there's no contradictions in your whole worldview. And so, yeah, he's very good at that. Now, of course, it's very different to do with somebody who's talking about their worldview versus like a foreign leader in the middle of a conflict. Like, it's a little bit different of a thing. But anyway, yeah, I get your point. That's an interesting, you know, quality that Pat has. By the way, I guess I should just say before we start this, I feel like a broken record sometimes. I apologize for that. But I also do. I see Pat's getting a lot of shit now for having Netanyahu on. I think this is all misguided, guys. More of this is better. There's nothing wrong with platforming is a bullshit leftist word. Anybody who uses it is just arguing from a place of like, there's already a spirit of censorship to what you're saying. And what do you mean? Don't platform Benjamin Netanyahu? Like, it's just too ridiculous. It's like the guy is, let's just say, in terms of power dynamics, he's doing quite well. So I don't think it's like, oh no, Patrick Bet David platformed the guy who gets unconditional support from the most powerful government of all time. I think probably we'd rather hear more than less. Okay, let's play the clip.
7 years. I was born in 78. The Shah was leading Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. And when you look at the stats from 1941 when he took office to 1979, that 38 years that he was in, not a lot of wars. It was fairly peaceful. You have some numbers on the low end of 17,000 people that died due to war in Iran during that 38 years. High numbers, 50,000. In the Middle East, not as chaotic. Of course, there was issues, but not as much as they have now. Then from 1979, Khomeini comes in, IRGC, which I had the former founder of IRGC here. We had a conversation with him. Khomeini comes in 79. From 79 till today, if you look at the numbers, low end, 600,000 people died in Iran, 2 million people. In the Middle East, 4.5 to 5.5 million people have died. Of course, some of the words are different places, but still, when you go back to Iran, you have Houthis,
okay,
you have all these other things that they control. How much
already? Because I don't know that I've ever mentioned this on the show before, but I have heard Pat kind of go on this tangent before, and love Patrick Bet David. He's my guy, and he's been very, very good to me, and I will be grateful to him for all time for facilitating the Chris Cuomo debate. I don't know what he's talking about here. Like, I don't know what, and I feel like Pat is, and look, it's okay. We all get some things wrong, not me, but everyone else. I feel like he's one conversation away from not saying stuff like this anymore. And it's like this weird, like, he's framing things, positioning them to be like, well, look, Iran obviously is the problem here because, I mean, look, like, the revolution happens in 79. There really wasn't much war before then. Like, yeah, the Middle East had its problems, but like, it wasn't that bad before then. But then after the Iranian Revolution, like, all of a sudden we have all these problems. Now, first of all, if that were true, it's still not an argument. Like, like if you, Rob, if you went and you walked into a bar and you got jumped and like viciously assaulted, or like and then I went like, there were no problems until Rob came into this bar. Like, that is a correlation, not a causation. It does not prove anything. The question, like, even if war increased or conflict increased after you entered, that doesn't mean you're responsible for it. So it's not as if like there's an ending to that story, but it's also just not true. And it's just like, look, however you feel about all of these things, let's say your view is that Israel is right in every single one of their conflicts, okay? Israel, the UN partition plan is in 1947. A civil war breaks out in Palestine. Israel declares independence in 1948. The Arab-Israeli War of 1948 happens right then. Israel, they had another war in the 50s with Egypt. What year was it? 54? I might be getting that wrong. Of course, there's the 67 Six-Day War. There's the Yom Kippur War in 1973. There were the whole early history of Israel is war. And in fact, almost all of the, like, Rob, I mean, more like intimately and personally about Israeli society than I do. As this is a big part of their whole culture, is that like all of their leaders in government were usually people who had fought in one of these wars over the years. And like, the idea that like there wasn't this like, is the implication here that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict didn't really exist until the Iranian Revolution? Because I'm just, honestly, I'm a little bit at a loss. I don't know what point Pat's trying to make here, but it doesn't seem to be borne out empirically by like the history of war and peace in the region. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Body Brain Coffee. I obviously love this sponsor. Creation of my brother, Louis J. Gomez, who, of course, really was the backer of myself and this podcast from the very, very beginning. I'll always be indebted to Louis for that. If you love this show, you should want to support Louis in everything he does, because he's really a big part of the reason why we're here and have been here for all these years. Plus, a brilliant stand-up comedian and hilarious podcaster as well. But let me tell you about Body Brain Coffee, because I'll tell you, I've been drinking this stuff and I feel great. It's delicious and it's really, really good for you. So go check it out. I highly recommend it. Testosterone levels are not what they used to be. The average man's testosterone has dropped nearly 40% in the last few decades, and it's not slowing down. This is a real problem for society, but also, of course, for the individual men. It means less strength, less drive, less energy, and ultimately less leadership in your own life. And that's why Body Brain Coffee exists. This isn't some gimmicky mushroom coffee. It's real premium Colombian coffee infused with ingredients designed to support testosterone, clarity, and focus. It's also third-party tested. I can tell you, as a coffee snob, it is delicious, and I feel great drinking it. Everybody I've talked to about this has been raving about it. It's been like universal positive feedback. And again, as I've said before, I really want to blow this thing up for my buddy Louis, and I want him to always know that I'm the one who did it, and that this isn't his own accomplishment. So I'm going to need you to go to bodybraincoffee.com, and you have to use the promo code DAVE20. But luckily for you, that'll get you 20% off your order right now, and enjoy some of this delicious testosterone boosting coffee. Bodybraincoffee.com, promo code DAVE20 for 20% off. All right, let's get back into the show.
I don't think, and well, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think Pat's more just talking about Israel-Iran and the conditions in Iran. I don't think he's talking about Israel's wars with other players in the region.
He said the Middle East more broadly. I mean, he wasn't just saying Iran. He was saying in the Middle East. I
misunderstood it on first listen.
Yeah, I mean, that's I wouldn't have said that if he had said, but he said in the Middle East, you know? So anyway, let's keep playing.
Do you think of what the Middle East was like pre the Islamic Revolutionary Guard took over? How everybody was able to find a way to get along versus what happened after 79. I know you're a big history person.
Right.
What is the difference between those two eras?
Well, the big difference is the
by the way, I'm sorry, just pause it again.
Islamist revolution that basically took this very...
Sorry, pause it again, and you could bring it back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Rob, he more explicitly says there. By the way, I only covered a few. Israel had bombed Iraq. Israel had invaded Lebanon, both in the I guess he's in the 80s. I go, okay, that was a few years later. My bad on that one, actually. Sorry, I got my dates mixed up there. That was like a few years after. But like, I don't know, those were other beefs. It's not like it was because there was the Iranian Revolution that they had to bomb Saddam's, facilities or something like that. He was an enemy of Iran. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. This just is not true. Anyway, let's keep playing and hear from Benjamin Netanyahu, who will of course agree. Yes, it was all Iran's fault.
What is the difference between those two eras?
Well, the big difference is the Islamist revolution that basically took this very gifted people. The Iranian people are enormously gifted. First of all, they have a tremendous historic culture, and you won't be surprised, but maybe your listeners would be surprised that in antiquity, in the time of the great Persian king Cyrus, there was a honeymoon between the Jews and the Persian people. And that relationship actually continued in modest ways, but in significant ways under the Shah. When the Shah went down and these theological thugs took over Iran, they basically said, our goal, that's in their constitution, is to export the Islamic revolution worldwide. And that's what they proceeded to do. So all the mineral resources, all the economic resources were now tuned to war. In the time that when I was finance minister and till today, Iran at that time and Israel had roughly the same GDP per capita. Ours went up from $17,000 to $60,000 per capita, and theirs stayed flat. Why? Because they took all that money, all that money to arm Hezbollah, arm Hamas, arm the Houthis, and pervade terror around the globe,
All right,
not
let's
only in the
pause
Middle
it.
East
Let's
against
pause it
the
right
Arabs.
there. Oh man. Oh geez. That's fucking okay. So, it's look. I mean, I guess I could start with the end there, but like when you say they took all this and to pervade terror all over the world, and again, of course, like what's never there is any objective definition of what terrorism would be, and then an objective metric of look how they've done more of it than we have. Like, like I mean, like if you were to say like broadly define terrorism, let's say it was like, I don't know, killing innocent civilians in order to achieve a political end. Okay, run me those numbers. Let's see I think Israel in the last 2 years would top Iran in the last 30. So there's just nothing there. But I do think this is a funny, I don't know, Rob, there's something like really amusing to me about Netanyahu here going, well, the problem with Iran is that they waste all of their money on their military industrial complex and all of this spending on weapons. I mean, this is just not going to advance your people's interests at all. It's like, well, there's some interesting implications from that worldview. Is that because, of course, Israel is not spending money on missiles and bombs. And then it's also like, well, I guess maybe you don't have to as much. I guess when we give them to you or we give you the money to buy them from us, I guess, yeah, you don't have to burn as much money on weapons. But of course, that kind of gets at the whole point that this, again, it's just like the most sloppy, like correlation causation, like statistics 101 argument. But like to just sit there and say that, well, look, our GDP went up and theirs didn't. And you're like, okay, but like, might that have something to do with the fact that the most powerful governments, and particularly the most powerful government, mine, which you've been leasing, has fully supported and funded Israel this entire time and has done nothing but sanction and box out Iran? Like, there are other factors involved here other than like who made the wisest decisions. And that anyway, one other point, and then you can give any thoughts you have, Rob, but one other point is that like and this is pretty well known, but like they always talk about like when the Shah fell, but they do seem to omit the detail of how the Shah was installed, which was a CIA-backed coup in 1953. That's what put the Shah back into power. And, what do you think, Rob, was happening with a sock puppet that the CIA put into power? Like, what could you take a wild guess of what the Shah was buying from the United States of America? Yes, weapons. This is, in fact, it's still some of the issues that they have right now, where they'll be like, which Netanyahu at some point, I'm sure, in this was like, Iran has fighter jets or something. Yeah, that's right, they do, because America sold a whole bunch of them to them. And so the idea that like that was the difference between the Shah and the mullahs was that, oh, they started spending money on weaponry or something, is just like ridiculous. But of course, also they kind of want to avoid talking about how the U.S. overthrew the government and installed the Shah, because immediately once that would change some, there'd be some rearranging in your head of like, oh, well, that might be part of what they're angry about. Anyway, any thoughts you have, Rob?
Well, it's nice to hear Netanyahu educating the American people on why we should be careful about funding wars, such as giving money over to Israel. Because it can bring down your GDP as you don't make other investments. The other thing I picked up on, and I know that I don't think he means it. I think it's just like Donald Trump. I love these people. They're great people. But it is kind of a racist perspective to go that the Persians are particularly wonderful people, similar to the Jewish people. So what people do you think are worse strands of human beings? I didn't realize that Israel had a genetic look on human beings, that some people were better genetically than others, and that you can have some sort of a racial identity based on where you live.
It sounds worse when you say, listen, we're just trying to genocide Arabs here. Like, what's the issue, Persians? It's there is I get what you're saying, and there's something to that. And even though like because even when you're being complimentary of a race, it does kind of, it just like if you're like, I love the white people, smart people, those whites, you're kind of like, all right, but what's the flip side of that? But yeah, breaking news, the Israelis are pretty racialist. Okay, let's keep playing.
Against Israel, against everyone else, against Americans. So, what has happened is that Iran collapsed economically. They have now infrastructure that is completely destroyed. Their water system is depleted. Their dams are empty. Their rivers are drying up because they don't take care of their people. This is a horrible sect. So I gave, in this room where I was sitting a few days ago, I gave a podcast to the Iranian people, which I do from time to time. And I had a glass of water.
Pause it already.
And
I'm just saying, I just love the new world. I just love that even Netanyahu is like, so I got out there and I gave a podcast. It's just hearing world leaders even say this shit. It's just, I don't know. Sorry. It's I shouldn't harp on this too much, but it's such a, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, feels like just a vindicating feeling when, everybody has to come down to our level here, come down to the level of the podcaster. Sorry. Anyway, anything you want to say, Rob?
I'll comment afterwards, but his message to the Iranian people is almost Mad Max-esque.
Okay. Well, here, let's hear it.
A pitcher of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we helped Iran and we're ready to help Iran with its water problems. And when you free yourselves of this tyranny, we'll do it again. Now, Patrick, how many views do you think I got for this this podcast?
How many?
It's a video, actually. How many? 70 million.
From
now,
Iran?
Iran has about 50 million, we
Wow.
think. So it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's half the population. And you can tell that it hit a nerve because all the Iranian leadership proceeded to respond to it and to attack it and so on, which tells you it really got to them. And that's in fact what is happening.
Pause it. Wait, he really said that?
He said, if you guys overthrow your leader, I'll give you water. Tell me that's not out of Mad Max of broadcasting into the town. Overthrow your leader, you'll be safe with me, and I will give you the much needed resources that you need.
Dude, first of all, I don't know every inch of that. But like, yes, to start with, look at this water. I got all this water. You want to drink water? All you got to do is overthrow this, which is, first of all, it's just it's like such a funny thing. I remember back when I was debating Laura Loomer, of all people. But like, she said the thing, I tore her up on it, but she said the thing at one point, if you remember, Rob, where she was like listing off all the things that Muslim countries had done. I think maybe she was specifically talking about the Palestinians. And then she said, I'm sorry, but that's the government, and it's the onus is on the Palestinians to overthrow the status quo, blah, 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 if they don't want to be treated like all in the same with them. And then I just said that, started listing off all the crimes of the American government. And I was like, is it on us? Is the onus on us to overthrow the status quo? Or are we just fair game? For nobody in their right mind denies that the war in Iraq was a big giant catastrophe that we were lied into. Like, do Iraqi citizens have the right to just kill American citizens now? Like, if they say, you didn't overthrow the status quo. You reelected George W. Bush in the United States of America, even after you knew he lied us into the war, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But the obvious answer is like, no. And as soon as you're talking about ourselves and not talking about these people that you're somehow able to dehumanize, you realize right away that like what a ridiculous standard that is. It's like, I don't know, overthrow the status quo. Like, as if my point is just going like, even if you're reaching an Iranian person, imagine you were just talking to a citizen of the United States. Hey, you want this thing I have in my hand? All you got to do is violently overthrow your government. You're like, well, that's kind of a tall order. I don't know. It's not so clear that regular people just have the option to overthrow the regime that rules over them. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I do a podcast, like, Every single episode is all about how I'm not happy with Washington, D.C. But I never thought to myself, like, well, maybe I'll just go overthrow them because, like, obviously I don't have the means to do that. So what the hell does that mean? And holding on to water? Like, yes, Rob, like, how does this not make you a cartoon villain? Like, what? What do you even say? Here, Iranian peasants? Like, what? Doesn't this look like delicious water to you? All you have to do is go to Tehran and overthrow the regime, and you too can have delicious water given to you by Israel. But and then the part I also don't even get, like, where he's going, I did a podcast. Guess how many views that thing got? And you're like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess if Adolf Hitler did a podcast, it would probably get a lot of views too if we had had the internet at the time. That doesn't, like, yes, you're a pretty important figure these days, Netanyahu. Is that what you're saying? But so 70 million people viewed it. 50 million people in Iran viewed it, he's claiming. And he's like, that's half the country. And you're like, yeah, but you're just saying they viewed it. Like, what is that? What exactly does that prove? It's not like he backed that up with something like it was like, and this change. And then he just basically said that the Iranian government was responding to it. And therefore, what? That proves that it hit a nerve. You guys are they're two nations who were at war a few weeks ago, maybe still, you know what I mean? The fact that they responded to what the leader of another, like, this is like a Twitter argument between girls in high school. Like, what? Like, I mean, you, like, imagine it, like, when Hitler declared war on the United States of America, and then FDR asked the Congress to declare war back, and then someone was like, oh my God, look at FDR responding to what Hitler said. He's so triggered right now. Like, what? Yes, they responded back to your thing. Oh, I don't know. I just thought all of that was a bizarre thing. Just a bizarre rant to go on. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Prolon by El Nutra. It is the only patented fasting mimicking diet that combines the benefits of prolonged fasting with a science-backed nutrition plan so you can hit your health and weight loss goals without actually having to give up all food. So to explain it briefly, you know how you hear about those fasting diets all the time? Well, what they require is fasting, not eating food. And there's a lot of benefits that come along with fasting, but the not eating food part really sucks. And so Prolon has solved that problem. It's a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. It's researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California's Longevity Institute, and it's backed by leading U.S. medical centers. Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, supports cardiovascular health, and reduces abdominal fat. And this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program, snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced. You get the benefits of fasting without having to give up the food. And right now, Prolon is offering Part of the Problem listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Just go to prolonlife.com/POTP. That's PROLONLIFE.com/POTP for this special offer. That's prolonlife.com/POTP. All right, let's get back into the show. All right, you got anything else you want to keep playing?
Let's keep playing.
Keep playing.
To attack it and so on, which tells you it really got to them. And that's in fact what is happening. This regime is not only tormenting and executing and killing the people of Iran, they subjugate them, but they seek to subjugate the entire world in their mad fantasies, the Muslim world and then everyone else. And of course, we're not Muslims, so we have to be eliminated because we stand in their way of conquering the entire Middle East. So Israel is fighting here not only our war, but the war of our Arab neighbors, the war of the Western countries. They're developing now ballistic missiles that can reach deep into the heart of Europe. Their plan is to develop, the next thing is an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile that will reach 8,000 kilometers. You add another 3,000 and they can reach New York. Where are you broadcasting from, by the way?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah, they can reach Florida, Fort Lauderdale, New York, Washington, Boston, and after that, any other city in the United States. And they intend to put nuclear warheads on these ballistic missiles.
Wow,
So
pause it right
this
here.
is not,
Dude,
this is
Okay, this is I didn't see this part before. This is actually really fascinating here, man, because just a few things. Number one, he is such a fucking liar. Like, it is unbelievable. And I'm sorry, but just like there is this shit does get me animated. There is just nothing I have more contempt for. There is nothing more dishonorable and despicable for a human being, because again, it's not even, it's somehow, and maybe I can't exactly articulate why this is, but it's somehow worse than just war propaganda, which is just about the worst thing in the world you could do. I mean, like, lying to try to get a mass murder campaign started is just about the worst thing you could do. But then somehow you find something worse than that, which is lying to get another country to come in and fight the war that you want to fight. You know, this is just, dude, even if you just listen to that, Rob, like the way he does, where he starts by going, this is what they want. This is what they're planning to develop. Then asks Pat where he's broadcasting from, then goes, oh yeah, they can hit that. But wait, what? They can, yes, okay, they can hit that, which you might, Rob, in your simple mind, take to be an implication that they currently have the capability to hit that. But no, Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about what they would do in their dreams that he just decided they wanted. Because no one's making the claim that Iran can hit Florida right now. He's just going, oh, but they want to get this stuff later down the road, that then they could do this. And then Rob, what they want to do is then put the nuclear weapons on them. The total fantasy, total war propaganda. There's absolutely no intelligence to back. They don't have nuclear weapons. They don't have nuclear. That is a objective fact, a consensus by everyone. What are you talking about? Now he's talking about putting the nukes that they don't have on the intercontinental ballistic missiles that they don't have and hitting a target which they can't reach. But he's saying it and then just says it as, oh, they can do that. They can. No, they can't. Pure lies. But look, man, here, this is why, by the way, I feel totally vindicated just in this moment by saying, stop. Listen, I know some of you even mean well. Stop complaining about people platforming him. Let him get up there. This was worth platforming him over, because what's the real admission here, Rob? What's the fucking real admission to everybody who is arguing about what a perfect success the 12-day war was? Well, guess where Netanyahu is? I thought the talking point 5 minutes ago was that you obliterated their nuclear program. That was the talking point they were going with before Donald Trump dropped the bunker busters. Literally, when Israel just started bombing them, they were all the Zionists on Twitter were out there saying, see, we didn't even need America's help. Just get out of the way. We've already destroyed their nuclear program. Then 48 hours later, they came back and went, well, okay, we do need American bunker busters, but that'll destroy their nuclear program. Then they sit there bragging about how whatever, only 30 people died in order to tremendously downgrade Iran. And here you have Benjamin Netanyahu just a couple months later. Oh, they can nuke Florida. Well, then what do we got to do if they can nuke Florida? You already see the justification is laid, right? Well, if we had to fight them over 60% enrichment, well, what do we have to do now, Rob? They can nuke Florida. Already laying out the propaganda for not his country, but our country to go fight yet another war of choice in the Middle East. And what do you think the goal is of this one, Rob? Is it just going to be to what? Downgrade, once again, destroy their nuclear capabilities, which he says they're right back to having / planning / whatever he's pulling out of his ass? No, the goal is going to be to overthrow that regime there, as has been the goal all along. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. Doesn't this to me, this contradicts everything that he was saying, that Donald Trump was saying, and that every goddamn last war hawk in the Western world has been saying since the 12-day war ended. 12-day war ended. Since then, that's what they've all been saying. Am I wrong?
Well, it was only a matter of time before Israel rearmed its defenses and was trying to repitch this. So I guess this is the start of them being back to pitching it.
Here, yeah, let's keep playing. Does Pat follow up on that?
He does not.
A fact. And the main fact that I want to say is that we're fighting in many ways the war of the West, the war of Western civilization against these barbarians. And our victory will be your victory. And one more thing. You talked about the Iranian Revolution. You remember how it started? You remember what the first thing that they did when they took over Tehran?
You talking about the toast with Carter,
Is
or
he
you talking
really?
about after when they took over?
Well, they took over and then they took the American embassy and held some 50 hostages.
My aunt
Remember
was in
that?
the embassy. Absolutely, yes.
Hold on. I'm sorry,
So-
Natalie. I just need pause it. Bring it back to where we just were right there. I want to hear his exact words again. Do you remember how it started? Do you remember the first thing they did? I'm pretty sure this is actually what he's going to say here, right? That's what he said?
New civilization against these barbarians.
Yeah, right here.
And our victory will be your victory. And one more thing. You talked about the Iranian Revolution. You remember how it started? You remember what the first thing that they did when they took over Tehran?
You talking about the toast with Carter, or you talking about after when they took over?
Well, they took over and then they took the American embassy and held some 50 hostages.
My aunt
Remember
was in
that?
the embassy.
All right,
Absolutely,
pause it
yes.
right there. Okay, so Pat, come on, man. You let him do that? Because Pat's Iranian, you know? He knows all this stuff, dude. It's unbelievable. Dude, Scott, he's like kind of known for Scott Horton, the great Scott Horton, just did 36 years with Lex Friedman. Phenomenal, by the way. He makes this point all the time, but it's funny because the way Scott almost always says it is that like they kind of loosely imply, or you remember in the American mind, like this all being one event, the Iranian Revolution and the hostage crisis, and you remember this. Oh yeah, they took over that, and then Scott will make the point like the way I've always heard him say it is that they imply that this was all one event. But actually, this Netanyahu just says it straight up. How did it start? What was the first thing they did? I mean, listen, the Iranian Revolution was I might be wrong about this. I think it was in January of 1979. Look this up for me, Natalie. The Iranian Revolution, I believe, was in January of 1979. The hostage crisis was in November. So I double check that I have those months right, but I'm very close if I'm not exactly right. It was almost a full year until that happened. That it was not the first thing they did. That's not how it started. January 1978. No, that's 79. It's definitely 79. But yeah, I think that's right. I think January is correct. But then it's got to be October, November, when the Iranian hostage. It's just, anyway, the point is that that's just not right. And he wants to make it all like bleed together as if it was one thing. But here's a few details about all of that, okay? Number one, it's not true. This was not all one event. It was not the first thing they did. But then on top of that, again, Rob, as I pointed out before, that embassy that they took was the embassy that they launched the coup in 53 from. Like, this was the embassy that they overthrew the government from previously. And I think, and I got to September. Okay, I was a little off there. What did I have it at? November? Okay, it was pretty close. Anyway, but so, and there was something, and I believe, I'd have to go back and reread this part of Enough Already, but it was, I think it was when they took the Shah in for cancer treatment, and it was taken as like a signal that they were going to try to reinstall the Shah and overthrow the revolution. And so that's what led to the, now, again, that's not justifying anything, but it wasn't all one event, and it wasn't the first thing they did, and it wasn't how it started. And an interesting detail of all of this is that Israel was still friendly with them. Oh, it was November 79. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, see? My memory's not so bad, not so great, but not so bad either. But so Israel was still friends. Iran-Contra, as you might remember that little scandal, Rob, right? Well, a big part of that, the Iranian part of the Iran-Contra, was that they were selling weapons to the Iranians during the Iran-Iraq war that Patrick Bet-David was a refugee from. So during that war, which, by the way, is also crazy to me that, like, I know I've mentioned this before, and I think about this specific thing, but I just find I don't know that there's any policy ever that could be less justifiable on its face than funding both sides of a war. Like, I just don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, even like a war a war of aggression is already about as evil a policy as you could get. But there is something about funding both sides of a war that is like, yo, that is next level evil. Like, you can't even pretend to really think what you're doing is justified. Anyway, that's what America did in the Iran-Iraq war. But in the Iran-Contra, so we were backing Saddam, but then we wanted also to back the Contras against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. And so we made this play that it would be worth it to sell these weapons and ship some cocaine into the United States of America. Me and Rogan talked about this a little bit the other day. But so in the Iran-Contra scandal, Israel was who the Reagan administration used to sell the weapons to Iran, because the Israelis were still friendly with them. So we went to the Israelis to like set it up. And this is, you know, I mean, this is after the 1980 war launched, somewhere in between 1980 and 1986. In those years is when this shit was going down. So this is not only is it, you know, like when Benjamin Netanyahu retells the story now, it's like, oh, the Iranian Revolution happened, and just because they hate America so much, they took all the hostages. This was all one thing. And that's why we fight them, because they're against you. But actually, Israel was still friends with Iran. It's like, just as always, Rob, as you know, this shit is never about, well, it's not about democracy. The Shah wasn't democratically elected. It's not about theocracy versus secularism. All of this shit, as you know, Rob, it's about business. All it was about. So when the Iranian Revolution first happened, there were people in the United States of America and definitely in Tel Aviv who were like, oh, I think we can do business with these guys. And it wasn't until they figured out they couldn't do business with them that they started hating them. But anyway, so this is just all just bad history. And I'm to be honest, I'm surprised he said it so bluntly. Usually they kind of just try to imply that, but don't straight up say it happened like this when you can Google it. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Stash, brand new sponsor we're thrilled to have on board. Saving and investing can feel impossible, but with Stash, it's not just a reality, it's easy. Stash isn't just an investing app. It's a registered investment advisor that combines automated investing with dependable financial strategies to help you reach your goals faster. They'll provide you with personalized advice on what to invest in based on your goals, or if you just want to sit back and watch your money grow, you can opt into the award-winning expert managed portfolio that picks stocks for you. Stash has helped millions of Americans reach their financial goals and starts at just $3 a month. Don't let your savings sit around. Make it work harder for you. Go to get.stash.com/problem to see how you can receive $25 towards your first stock purchase and to view important disclosures. That's get.stash.com/problem. Paid non-client endorsement, not representative of all clients and not a guarantee. Investment advisory services offered by Stash Investments, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risks. Offer is subject to terms and conditions. All right, let's get back into the show. Anyway, any thoughts, Rob? Go ahead.
I picked up on a different little party trick that Netanyahu pulls there, and it's a very slick trick. Maybe I'll start utilizing this myself. But he makes his point of, hey, Iran is, as you pointed out, looking to build weapons that they don't have so that they can strike you. And that's why we have to fight them over here so you don't have to fight them over there. And he's smart enough to not just let that point hang so that there can be a follow-up question or a criticism of it. And he goes, let me make another point. And then he phone sales it where he goes, let me ask you a question, which then diverts like the ability of Patrick to go, well, let me ask you something on that. Very slick trick to just gloss over, hey, we're fighting them over here so you don't have to fight them over there, which, by the way, later in this conversation, Patrick does ask about all the money that we spend, and Netanyahu basically makes the argument, well, you know, we never asked you guys to fight these wars. You're not doing boots on the grounds. He goes, there was that little mission that you guys pulled for us in Iran, but for the most part, we do our own fighting. You're just giving us funding. And by comparison, if you had an ally like that in Afghanistan or Iraq, you could have saved your guys yourselves $2 trillion. And And that's kind of his argument for we share intelligence and we're saving you money because we're actually fighting these fights so that you guys don't have to. But just more focused to what just happened. It's such a slick trick to just float that out there of we're fighting it over here so you don't have to fight it over there, and then just divert the conversation to something else so that doesn't have to be defended or addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, no, you're absolutely right about that. That is a good little tactic there. So see, Rob, this is why you got to platform people, because you learn something. We teach the good guys some tricks. It is like, I mean, I get fundamentally, it's just like, this is such, and again, look, this is part of the reason why I'm able to go win these debates on this topic, because it's just like the whole thing is such a house of cards. Like that whole fundamental argument is just so weak on the face of it. Like there's just how can you really convince anybody that like, particularly like short of Al-Qaeda, right? Who like literally were largely motivated by the United States support for Israel. It was a huge part of their beef. And it's not just that like it's stated in bin Laden's declarations of war to America or the open letter to America. Mohammed Atta was radicalized by an Israeli attack. And, you know, like it's very, very clear that this was a huge part of what motivated them. But look, even Al-Qaeda, you know, we're not fighting Al-Qaeda really right now. And we're on their side in Syria. We were on their side in Libya. We are on their side, or have been on their side in Yemen. We're not fighting against Al-Qaeda. You know, the groups who are being opposed right now in the Middle East are the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, the Houthis, you know, and of course the people of Gaza. I mean, that's who's being, and so the idea of just like fighting, the idea that we'll fight them so you don't have to. It's the same as like, we'll fight them over there so we don't have to fight them over here. But the idea that Israel will fight them so we don't have to. No, we just don't have to. We just don't have to. And it is so listen, like, you know, throughout history, whatever revisionism might be warranted and justified and accurate, you know, if you're talking about the United States of America has to deal with Adolf Hitler, like, okay, you can sell that. That's within the realm of believability. The United States of America has to deal with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet menace, or even Mao Zedong and the Chi-Coms, or something like that. You could kind of understand it. But the argument that like, we have to deal with Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi, or even, what do they even have at this point? Like, we have to deal with Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis, or what? If you weren't fighting them over there, what, Benjamin Netanyahu? They'd be storming Washington, D.C. or something like that. Like, we would be in some situation where it was a war of necessity that for our very survival, we would have to fight these. Get out of here. Who doesn't know? In the very best case scenario, Israel is our little puny proxy who's dominating all these guys, right? And like, by the way, I'm not saying they're our proxy or we're their proxy. It's a weird relationship that we have. But I'm just making the point that like, you just cannot sell this. And in fact, you could find, Rob, you might have even seen, there's the old Benjamin Netanyahu videos, like from the 80s, where he's arguing that, because back then they switched it, of course, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But back then, the argument was that we're fighting the Soviets' proxies over here. That's why you got to be on our side against the, you know, Islamic terrorism. And I think he's on record one time, like, have you ever seen, there's like a compilation video of Benjamin Netanyahu's guarantees, because he's like, I guarantee, you know, if the Soviet Union fell, the PLO would collapse in a minute, or something like that. I guarantee that the Soviet Union is really what's behind all of these, right? So that was the narrative until the Soviet Union collapsed, just like with the broader military industrial complex. And then they were like, oh, we need another enemy to sell. But then, of course, you know, I guarantee if you overthrow Saddam Hussein, democracy will sweep the region, positive reverberations. Well, you know, it's always guarantee. I guarantee, always wrong. always getting the prediction because he's just a lot supporting Israel. But it's funny that like you almost go like, I don't know, man. The one with the Soviet Union was just more believable. I mean, that was bullshit too, but like at least it was more believable to go like, no, there's the red menace that controls half of Europe. These are their guys. So you want to support us because we're fighting their guys. We're your guys. But this, like, we gotta fight them over here. So you can't fight them over there. And of course, the reality of the situation is that, you know, it's always like you can kind of spin this in either direction, but if you just zoom out, like zoom all the way out and like take a hit of acid or something, like just zoom out and rethink the world and start from a fresh starting point, and you'd go like, all right, well, like there's all these kind of, compared to us, these very puny little, you know, countries that surround Israel, and they all hate Israel's guts, and we're supporting Israel while Israel fights all of these guys. And then Israel is saying, we're doing this for you because if we didn't fight all these guys, you'd have to fight them. You only have to reimagine that for a second to go like, wait a minute. So the talking point is that we have all the same enemies as Israel. You know, I remember I was in a debate once with this other comedian named Ami, and he said that was his point. He goes, we have all the same enemies as Israel. And I was like, yeah, why is that? Like, it's kind of obvious why Israel has the enemies that they have, right? They're like the surrounding countries, okay? Like, however you feel about it, you know, and look, it's a long, complicated history. I've spent quite a lot of time talking about it. And there's a lot to it. I'm always still learning more about it and reading a new book, and I learned more information about this. It's a long, complicated history, and there are lots of Israelis and Zionists who have been in the wrong. There's lots of Arabs who have been in the wrong too. I'm not like absolving anybody of responsibility, but the bottom line is that a bunch of Eastern Europeans came up with a political theory that said they wanted to create a Jewish state in Arab land. And they ultimately, through the years, put it together and worked to do that, and ultimately created that state. And that ultimately resulted in like between 700,000 and 800,000 people who used to live in what is now considered Israel being forced out of Israel. And then there was a war in 1967, and then that led to an occupation of these, you know, lands that are populated with Arab Palestinians, and that's gone on ever since then. And however you feel about that, it just makes sense to you why there's a beef there. You know, they came and created this Jewish state here, and the people surrounding them don't care for that very much. And the people who used to live in that area, who no longer live in that area, sure do resent the fact that they did this. Whatever side of that conflict you're on, it's pretty obvious that's the conflict. Why are we involved? Why are they our enemies also? Well, just because Islam is so bad and radical and hates everybody, and like, yeah, or maybe it has to do with we're supplying the weapons. You know, like maybe the whole beef is that we're involved in this fight to begin with. That seems much more likely than, thank God we got these guys starting shit with everybody over there, because if it wasn't for that, we'd have to take care of it ourselves. Like, what would we have to do to Lebanon if Israel wasn't fighting them? Can you imagine actually trying to make that argument that, let's just say it's the year 2025. We got all the problems that we have. The world looks the way it looks, but Israel didn't do the pager attack. Israel wasn't bombing Lebanon at all for the last 2 years. You're telling me you have a coherent argument for why right now it'd be like Donald Trump's going to have to go do something about Lebanon? We really got no option. Like, it's just, this is pure fantasy, purely made up. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Crowd Health, a great company I've been telling you about for many years now. What if you could get healthcare for under $100 a month? You've heard me talk about Crowd Health. I want to tell you about something they've just introduced. You can finally rid yourself of the bureaucracy of the healthcare system and take agency over your own health. Crowd Health just introduced the Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle. They just need a little help with the black swan events that happen in life. Well, now for just $95 a month, you get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescriptions and lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. You stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. And what if something major happens? Well, you pay the first $15,000 and the Crowd steps in to help fund the rest. It feels like the options that we used to have before Obamacare messed everything up. And now, if you use the promo code POTP, it's only $80 for the first 3 months. Go check them out at joincrowdhealth.com and use the promo code POTP for that deal, just $80 for the first 3 months. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out, take your power back. This is how we win. All right, let's get back into the show. All right. Any other thoughts on any of that, Rob?
Now let's continue.
Well, I think, did we we still got a little bit more. There we go. Perfect.
So this regime began by taking hostages. And what do their
No, it
proxies do today? They take our hostages for extortion. They take our hostages. I liberated 205 out of 255. We still have at least 20 alive and about 30 dead, and we intend to get all of them. And that's what we're fighting for now. But it just tells you what the nature of this regime and its proxies is. It's anti-West, anti-America, anti-Western civilization. It's not good to be a Christian. It's very bad to be a Jew in Iran. And it's very bad to be either one of those at any part of Iran's proxies.
Right. I wish we had a couple hours to talk about Iran because I have a lot of interest in that topic with you. So if you like this clip and you want to watch the entire...
All right. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's at the end, it's just kind of this like, this desperate attempt to just be like, we're the guys who are with you and they're the guys who are against you. And, the argument that it's not very good to be a Christian and I don't know. I know there's certainly differences in different parts of the world, or I'm sorry, I should say in different parts of that region, there are different areas where it's better or worse to be a Christian. The idea that has been the motivator of U.S. or Israeli foreign policy is laughable to anyone who knows like the first thing about the last 25 years of U.S. and Israeli foreign policy. That's what's really motivating them. If anybody wants to say like life, when we were backing Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria, or when we were on the same side as all those jihadists in Libya or in Yemen, the idea that you're saying life was definitely better for the Christians under Assad, under Saddam Hussein, than it was under the head choppers who took over, or at least parts of the country, now in Syria, the whole country. It certainly is true that there's other parts of that region where it's not very good to be a Christian, but I'll tell you, one of the places where it's not very good to be a Christian is Gaza and the West Bank. It's not very good to be a Muslim in those areas either. And so, I think you don't, first off, you shouldn't just get credit for how you treat people in your own geographical area, but also like next door counts too. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I know my friend Justin Amash had some of his Christian family got killed over there, and they were in a church and got hit by Israeli bombs. So, anyway, just seems to me like kind of a pathetic attempt to be like, we're all on the same side here and these are the bad guys. But again, like much like the conflict in Iran, it's like, and this is part of the reason why I always found it to be like a very, you always get like the low IQ response whenever you talk about the motivations of the other side in a conflict. If I talk about like Ukrainian entry to NATO being what the war was all about, then people go, oh, so you're justifying what Vladimir Putin does because you're saying he had this legitimate grievance or something, which is like, again, it's just a very low IQ response. Like saying someone had a legitimate grievance does not therefore mean they're justified in anything they do about that grievance. And I don't think Putin was justified in launching this war, but I do think that was why it happened. Likewise, I've always made this point with Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, that it's like, I don't know, if you don't even address what they're fighting for, then how do you ever plan on solving this thing, you know? And if you just make it up, obviously you're doing that intentionally so that we just keep the fighting going. If you just say, oh, they hate freedom or something like that. And look, with Iran, again, they're not quiet about it. Like, if you ask, you know, like what the beef is, I've had lots of Iranians who have explained this to me before, and I'm sure almost everybody listening, if you've looked into it at all, have seen this, but they will quite tell you, they do not forget that we overthrew their democratically elected government and installed a dictator who they did not like very much. That is part of the reason why they didn't like us. They also have not forgotten that we backed Saddam Hussein and sold him the chemical weapons that they used against the Iranian people. They also, you know, there is some, or more than some, there is a lot of association or camaraderie between the Shiites in Iraq and the Shiites in Iran. And they also remember that George H.W. Bush told the Shiites to rise up and overthrow Saddam Hussein, and then backed out on them and let Saddam put all of them down. Like, these are things that they remember. And that doesn't mean that they're justified in doing anything violent toward any American. But if we're gonna like actually talk about like why is there a beef here to begin with, to just say like, oh, they're on that side and we're on this side, really isn't going to cut it. It's not going to solve anything. And the fact is that we have all of these enemies. I'm talking Americans here, not Israelis, but we have all of these enemies in the Middle East because we've been intervening in that part of the world for many, many decades, and they do not care for that. And we should stop doing that because we have no need to have these fights. And in fact, these wars are destroying us. The last thing we need is to get into another one. And part of our intervention there has been propping up this guy who Pat is interviewing, which we ought not do. All right. That's all I got. Rob, anything final?
Fight them over there. Yeah, just porchstore.com. Got a lot of porches coming up, going all the way to like December. And then I did a great interview with Gene Epstein for Zero Hedge last week. We delved into...
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was great. He gave the full breakdown on why it was dumb of Donald Trump to fire the head of like the man, am I retarded? The number reporting on jobs. I think it's the BLS or BIS, something like that. And then we also got into whether or not there's a demand amongst American workers for manufacturing jobs, if that's really where you can be making the most money, and if that's a smart play. So you can go listen. A lot of good in-depth breakdowns by Gene.
I highly recommend anything that Gene Epstein is a part of, or anything that you're a part of, Rob.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Catch you tomorrow. Members only episode tomorrow. Catch you then. Peace.